a woman is not for the faint of heart. As if caring for your own needs wasn't enough, being a mother means you are responsible for the health, the safety, and welfare of another human being. Now, given the size and complexity of raising a child while female, why are so many people constantly judging, criticizing, and even shaming women for their parenting skills and personal choices? This and the status of the Me Too movement, all coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is The Special Report. Live from Los Angeles, this is The Special Report.
According to a recent poll, more than 2/3 of mothers have felt mom-shamed for their parenting skills and decisions. Negative comments, abusive social media posts, and even sending risque photos of a mom to her kids' school, causing the kids to be kicked out, are just a few examples of women being unfairly judged and shamed. No doubt, mothers are under attack, and in many instances, it's other mothers who are doing the harm. Did the Me Too movement help or hurt women's abilities to be more in control of their own images, bodies, and livelihood? Here for our leadoff panel is famed victims' rights attorney Gloria Allred. She has represented women in some of the most high-profile sexual harassment and discrimination cases in the country, from Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, to even Donald Trump. Gloria has taken on notorious perpetrators and in doing so has become an outspoken and effective voice in the Me Too movement. She is my female lawyer crush and mother to my good friend Lisa Bloom. She also happens to be the author of Fight Back and Win. Good morning and welcome, Gloria.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Areva.
I have told you this before, you are and have always been one of the female lawyers that I looked up to even before I had a chance to meet you. So I am like super excited to have you joining me today. You know, when I think about women lawyers who have shattered every glass ceiling and who have made just such a difference in the practice of law and just how women professionals think of themselves. Obviously, you come to mind. Your picture's right there in the dictionary when we think about women and liberation of women. So I just want to get into this conversation about Me Too. You have been such an
But before we do, I just want to give a shout out for you, because I'm so proud of you. I've known you for so many years, and you are a star, a rock star, on television with very clear, very well-prepared analysis of the important issues of our time. So I'm just thrilled every time I see you, and I listen intensely to what you have to say.
Well, thank you. I can say I learned a lot from watching you on television and, you know, being such a important figure in so many topics that impact women, women of color, and just women in general, and particularly this Me Too movement. When I think about it, you know, we get excited thinking we've made so much progress. Then you hear these stories about mom shaming and women attacking other women. I don't know. I feel like we've made a lot of progress, but maybe not as much as we thought we have. So help us understand where we are in this moment, particularly around Me Too issues.
Yes, and we have been, my law firm, Allred, Rockland Goldberg, we have been the leading women's rights law firm in the United States for 45 years. And we've won hundreds of millions of dollars for women who have been the victims of injustice, especially by rich, powerful, famous men, but not only by them. People in the sports world, in the entertainment world, in the religious world, in the political world, in the business world and educational world, and so much more. Moms have also been really often treated as second-class citizens. I think a major problem has been, especially during the pandemic, so many of them have been unemployed because either they've been in the hospitality industry or other industries where they've lost their jobs or been laid off, and also because they have the responsibility for their children. I want to add that a major issue for them has been the inability to obtain their court-ordered child support on time or in the amount that has been ordered, and that has forced many of them onto welfare, which is not where they want to be, receiving aid to families with dependent children. For those who have seen my documentary about my battles for women's rights, my documentary on Netflix, which is about my decades-long battle for women's rights, you'll see me sitting in at the district attorney's office many years ago because they were not doing an adequate job of helping mothers to collect their child support. And that's still streaming on Netflix, by the way. It's called Seeing Allred. But in any event, what we have to have is more activism on the issue. And as we approach Mother's Day, we have to remember that there are many economic injustices against moms. They shouldn't be shamed. They should be commended for what they do every day that they're not getting credit for. For the Me Too movement, there's so much going on. I represent a number of victims of Harvey Weinstein. I represented the key victim in the New York criminal case against Mr. Weinstein. And my client, Mimi Haley, who was so brave, he was convicted of criminal sexual assault of her. As a result of her testimony, he was sentenced to 20 years in state prison in New York. There was one other victim that I didn't represent, but he was also sentenced to 3 years for her. So Mimi has been the trailblazer in all of this. Soon, actually, on Friday of this week, Mr. Weinstein is facing an extradition hearing in New York, where Los Angeles District Attorney's Office is seeking to have him extradited to Los Angeles for a prosecution here. And I represent two of the alleged victims for whom charges have been filed in Los Angeles. So watch out for that, because I expect that prosecution to proceed, and perhaps the trial will be in the fall. In addition, I represent 20 victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and filed lawsuits in New York. For some of them, we are representing many of them in the claims process to seek compensation for them in the confidential claims process set up for them in New York. In addition, I represent many victims, alleged victims of Bill Cosby. We know that we are awaiting the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision on whether or not the prior bad act victim should have been permitted to testify in his criminal case. I represented the majority of those prior bad act victims who testified in that case. Also, I represent a number of victims or alleged victims of R. Kelly. That criminal trial is likely to be held in New York and Southern District of New York in the fall. And of course, I also represent one of the alleged victims of Cuba Gooding Jr. So there's so much going on. And in addition, we represent many, many women who are victims of injustice. And we've literally won thousands of confidential settlements without a lawsuit against many high-profile figures, so that these women who decide they want their privacy can go on with their lives, but also make the wrongdoers accountable.
And Gloria, help us understand. I mean, you just identified some of the most powerful men in this country, like you said, from entertainment, to business. Help us understand what it's like today versus, say, even 10 years ago for a woman to come forward and even make a complaint about being sexually harassed or molested or assaulted by a powerful man such as Harvey Weinstein. At one point, you couldn't watch a movie and watch the credits scroll without seeing the Weinstein Company, name affiliated or associated with that movie. So, how are women finding the strength and the courage to come forward and file complaints against these kind of men?
Well, I think it's important that they know that they're not alone, that they have support, that they have legal advice. And that's why many of them have contacted me and also contact other attorneys. But because they can then know all their options, so that it is very scary to have to go through this alone. And fear is a weapon that often is used to keep women intimidated and afraid of speaking out. You know that I also represent a woman who's made serious allegations of rape against Armie Hammer. And it's, you know, it is a lot of pushback, you know, on social media. But also, I always like all my clients or people who call me to know all of their options. Some people want privacy and confidentiality, don't want to speak out in the press, and that's fine. They don't need to. Some people want a confidential settlement. That's fine too. Some people want to file a lawsuit, which is public, and that's fine too. And some want to speak out publicly. And that's up to them. Everyone needs to know the benefits and risks of what they are contemplating doing. And I always propose and suggest that everyone should know that prior to making a decision about what to do. And some people choose not to do anything, and that's okay too. But sometimes the cost of doing nothing is much greater than the cost of doing something.
So, Gloria, anybody that, you know, hasn't been living under a rock has seen you. They've seen you standing next to these women. They've seen you at those, you know, those huge press conferences where sometimes the victims are speaking out and they're telling their stories. So I'm just wondering now, when, you know, when that defendant gets a call and they know it's from Gloria Allred herself or from your office, you know, what's the power dynamics in those kinds of conversations? I'd have to imagine that by now, with the hundreds of millions of dollars that you've recovered for women, and, you know, the way that you've just positioned yourself as the leader in this field, that you know, men understand if the call is coming from Gloria, they probably need to get the checkbook out, and they need to get the policy book out, and they need to start thinking about making systemic changes.
I do think that you're right that they take my contacts with them seriously, because they know that, you know, we've not only done press conferences, we litigate cases in a court of law. We've litigated cases all the way up to, and we've had precedent setting cases in the California Supreme Court, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. You know, I litigated one case for 23 years against the Catholic Church, and we finally were successful in getting a settlement for our client. We don't give up. We won the largest sexual harassment verdict for one victim of sexual harassment by a billionaire at the end of 2019, the largest verdict in California that year. $58,250,000 for one victim of sexual harassment, Miham Khan. We give credit to the jury for believing her. And in a few months earlier, we won another jury verdict for another victim of sexual harassment by that same billionaire, Alki David. And another jury awarded more than $5 million to that other victim. So, yes, lawyers take us seriously because they know that, you know, we have the resources, we have the commitment to take a case and file it and litigate it all the way through to trial and then up through the Court of Appeals if necessary. So it's better to take us seriously in the beginning, because we don't just make allegations. We've done a very diligent investigation of the allegations, and we are prepared for battle.
Yeah, I have to say, not just women, you actually represent, I don't even know if I've told you this, but your firm represented a distant relative of mine, a man, and he was fired from his job. And I think it was some kind of a, you know, wrongful termination case. And you guys won a huge, you know, jury verdict for him in a trial. So not just.
I'm glad to hear that. Yes, I'm glad to hear that. I didn't know that person was a relative.
I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago or so. I remember he's like a cousin on my husband's side or something, but he was incredibly grateful to you and your firm for winning this sizable jury award for him in a wrongful termination case. I do want
Well, thank you. I want to say that I'm glad you pointed out, because we do represent men, because men can be victims of sexual harassment as well. And, you know, we've won huge verdicts, you know, a multi-million-dollar verdict for a man who was sexually harassed by another man on the job many years ago. I think it was more than $5 million. And that's even before the United States Supreme Court decided that men could sue other men for sexual harassment. They could be victims. So, yes, we do that. And of course, we represent many. We have many pioneering cases for men who have been the victims of, you know, same-sex discrimination in employment or sexual harassment in employment. And so we have been leaders on the issue of the fact that persons who are gay or lesbian or transgender should enjoy equal rights and not be denied their rights on account of their sexual orientation.
What do you think, Gloria, is the biggest lesson? I mean, you've represented victims. You've gone up against some of the biggest companies, in the country, some of the most powerful men. What do you think the one or two, critical lessons that we can learn as a society from these cases?
Areva, I think we can learn that women have more strength and power to win justice than perhaps they ever realized they had. And empowerment is what this is all about. And that's what we've been doing, that many victims who've been living in silence with their secrets and have, had internalized their fear and perhaps become alcoholics or drug addicts because they have turned their, anxiety about it inward and their rage inward, that when they find that they have options, there's something they can do about it that's safe to make the wrongdoers accountable. It's empowering to them, and it's also healthy for them because they now are on the offensive. They're not on the defensive, and they realize that there's something they can do that's very important and that will help not only them, but also help others as well.
And thinking of that empowerment, that feeling of empowerment that you say women have now, that perhaps, we didn't feel so empowered decades ago. How do we make sure that translates into women being able to make decisions about their bodies? Like, posting a sexy picture, posting, a picture of their bodies that they feel really good about. How do we get other women and men to recognize that that's a part of this empowerment that you're talking about?
Well, that's about education. And it's also about, we know the victim shaming, victim blaming. We know all of that. So we do have to help people to understand that women have rights, but they also have responsibilities. And so they have to be responsible for their choices. But on the other hand, people do, in the court of public opinion, have the right to express their opinion, but also always be careful about respecting other women's choices. I want to say that the choice of reproductive freedom is also under attack. The right to choose legal, safe, available, affordable abortion is a very, very important issue. It's under attack by politicians in many states. There's governors now signing bills to restrict a woman's right to choose abortion once there is a so-called fetal heartbeat. All of this is in contravention to Roe v. Wade. It's all an attack, an attempt to eliminate or severely restrict a woman's right to choose abortion. And we have to always remember that women should have that choice and always fight to keep it legal and safe.
Yeah. Now, what an excellent point, Gloria, because you're right. We're living in an era where lots of our rights as women, hard-earned rights, are under attack at the Supreme Court level, at the political level, and we need women like you. We need fighters. We need women who are going to stand up to those that would seek to deny us the rights that we have to do whatever we choose with our bodies, whether it's our reproductive rights or our rights to express ourselves in terms of how we dress and how we present ourselves to the world. So,
and you will see that in my Netflix documentary, Seeing Allred, that I do speak about this abortion issue and also why it's important to me personally and what I went through when abortion was not legal. Prior to Roe v. Wade, which was decided in 1973 by the United States Supreme Court, when prior to that, many states could make it a crime for doctors to provide an abortion, even though it was not a crime for a woman to obtain one, and how so many women had to have back alley abortions and almost died, and some did die as a result of these laws that politicians have imposed on women because of their religious convictions or because they think it will help them politically. So all I can say is there's so many, battles that still need to be fought for women's rights. And I promise you and all of your viewers that I am 100% committed to continuing to fight these battles against injustice. I don't care who it is. I mean, we just spoke out recently. I have a client who alleges inappropriate sexual contact by Governor Cuomo. Whoever it is, we're going to support our clients in their decisions if we think there's a basis for doing so. And I just feel very blessed to be able to have the trust and the confidence of so many women who contact me and men who contact me, and to be able to help them to fight to win justice.
Well, you've been fighting, as you said, for 45 years, and you've been winning for 45 years. More importantly, fighting and winning. So thank you so much, Gloria, for sitting down with me this morning, sharing that, your illustrious history as a civil litigator, as a fighter for victims. And thank you for saying that you are going to stay on that battlefield. You're going to stay committed to these causes. I want to make sure everyone checks out your Netflix special, get your book, Fight Back and Win, and follow this dynamic woman, because she is single-handedly changing the face of victims' rights and how we think about women and women empowerment. So again, my lawyer girl crush, Gloria Allred, my just absolute joy to have you join me this morning. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Areva.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Right. Thank you so much. I just love powerful women. And this morning, we're going to be talking to lots of them. My next guests are Dr. Sara Hayden. She's a professor at the University of Montana. Her research focuses on women's health, sexuality, feminist theory, and motherhood. Also joining me is Leslie Bruce. Leslie is a #1 New York Times bestselling author and an award-winning entertainment journalist. She has a new book out, and it's called You Are Effing, with an F, Awesome Mom. And it's one of the most buzzed parenting books on the market today. Good morning, Leslie. And good morning, Dr. Hayden.
Good morning.
All right, Leslie, I got to first ask that title of that book. Okay. I didn't want to say the word. I don't know how, when you talk about it, how do you describe it?
I mean, I say effing awesome mom, but I think that there is no more intense field than motherhood. So if you're going to use an F word every now and then, what better place?
Perfect place. And then, you know what? We're talking about empowerment and women's rights, so women can drop F-bombs. More power to you. I love the title, love the book. I want to jump, though, into, talking to Gloria, iconic civil rights lawyer, been fighting for victims' rights and women's rights. And so here we are, 2021. We have someone like Gloria Allred, who's won, hundreds of millions of dollars, has represented thousands and thousands of women, but yet we hear stories in the news like Crystal Jackson, this woman married in California, 3 kids, decides to post some pictures on this OnlyFans site. And what happens to her afterwards is just shocking, I think, to me as a woman thinking about the progress that we've made. But a story like Crystal's makes me think, well, have we really made a lot of progress? And for those that don't know this story, a dad at the school where Crystal's kids go saw her photos, or some of her photos, on this site, tells his wife. The wife then apparently, tells other women at the school. Somehow they print pictures, they send them to the school. And next thing you know, her 3 sons are kicked out of this private school. Help us understand, Dr. Hayden, what's going on in 2021 that something like that is happening to a mom?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I hear that you're surprised by this. I have to say that I'm not, unfortunately. There remains so much pressure on women to perform a particular kind of womanhood, and particularly mothers to perform a particular kind of motherhood. Mothering tends to be linked to the reproductive body, not the sensual body. And so when a mother expresses her sexuality, she tends to be shamed. That's something that's fairly common still, unfortunately.
Leslie, you are an entertainment journalist. You've written about, tons of stories. When you read the story about Crystal, what was going through your mind?
I mean, I agree with Dr. Hayden, but I'm disappointed because I feel like we have progressed so much. And I feel like this is if there's nothing else during this pandemic, I've learned that there's nothing I wouldn't do for my children to keep them healthy and to keep them safe. And, my question to those parents that are aghast by this is, what wouldn't you do for yours? And, when hardship occurs, if far be it from me to judge how you're going to put food on your table, how you're going to pay the internet bill so your child can still attend Zoom class, or, despite the world shutting down, your child is growing and still need clothes. How are you going to pay for that? So I don't think that I'm in any position, or any woman is in any position, to judge what the choices you make to take care of your family. So it's disheartening, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things that Crystal, the story that's come out about her, one, she's married, and that this was a choice that she and her husband made. And she said that it was a way for her to rekindle some romance in their own relationship. That's why she started taking the photos. And then it became a stay-at-home job for her. She said she was originally making around $15,000 a month. And then that grew over a year's time or more to $150,000 a month. So this is, very lucrative. As you said, Leslie, this is a way that she's feeding her family. Do we see, Dr. Hayden, in a lot of these stories, is it about women trying to earn a living?
Yes, because this really harkens back to previous arguments that women had around maternity, right? The so-called mommy wars, where stay-at-home moms were highly critical of women who worked, and working moms were highly critical of women who stayed at home. And so while I agree with Leslie, I think I would never judge a woman for doing what she needed to do for her own financial resources and, frankly, for her own self-fulfillment. I think we still continue to judge one another, and this idea that we're judging the woman for engaging in this behavior, that it's sex work in addition to the fact that it's work, as opposed to putting all of her energy into.
Yeah, I think we may have lost Dr. Hayden's audio for a minute. Let me
Caring
go
for
to
her children that we see.
Oh, she's back. Okay. We lost your audio for a minute, Dr. Hayden.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm getting an internet is unstable. In any case, what I was saying is that it's really disappointing. I agree with Leslie about that. But I think it is not surprising, because there are so many cultural pressures on women to be a particular kind of women. And when we violate that, we get shamed.
Yeah, Leslie, one of the headlines that really disturbed me about this story is, it was the sexy housewife, headline. And as a journalist, do you see men, stories like this, headlines like the one around Crystal? Have you seen those headlines as it relates to men, who post about themselves on social media?
Absolutely not. We don't see that. It is, as Dr. Hayden said, it is the mom culture that we have. It's the mom shaming culture that we have, that a mother needs to act and look a particular way, and we don't hold men to the same sort of accountability. Where are the questions about what men are looking at, what married men are looking at OnlyFans sites to look at women? We're not shaming him for his choices of how, he chooses to spend his time. But yet we're doing that to the woman in the situation, which is, unfortunately, feels just like back steps to what we are making, and what Gloria was speaking about in your previous segment. The steps forward that we're taking, these feel like these are just these setbacks that are unfortunate, and we need to keep pushing forward to tell women to embrace their bodies, love their bodies. As a mother, your body is your temple. And whether we choose to embrace our new form, or celebrate our scars and stretch marks, or whether we choose to work to get our pre-baby body back and celebrate it by posting bikini photos and this, whatever, that is our choice as women. And it's far be it from me to shame anybody for it, or any man to do that.
Yeah, one of the people I follow religiously on Instagram is Lizzo, the pop singer, and she's not a mom, but she's a big woman, and she celebrates her body in the most amazing way. So she just had a birthday, so she did this photo shoot with like 4 or 5 of her girlfriends, and it was a nude photo shoot. Now they were covering their breasts and their private parts, their vagina. Okay, Areva, you can say the word, their vagina, and so. But it was just this beautiful photo of women, all different, sizes and shapes, just celebrating their bodies. And, a lot of people have been so incredibly critical of Lizzo because, like, oh my God, she's a big woman. How dare her, expose her body because it doesn't fit the perfect, I don't know, the narrative of, whose body is acceptable to be shown to the public. That really bothers me. And so that's why I think I follow her and I'm such a fan of hers, is because I celebrate with her as she celebrates, all of her curves and all of her body. But I do want to ask you, Dr. Hayden, this feels a lot like to me, in that era when we weren't prosecuting men, when women who were sex workers were, often targeted by law enforcement agents and agencies, and they were arrested and they were penalized. But the men, you would see women pictures on, in newspapers and often on television, and they were shamed for being involved in, the sex work business. But the men who were purchasing the sex from the women were never criticized, never shamed, and weren't arrested until very recently. So, is this kind of the same thing happening?
Absolutely. And I think partly it has to do with how we define men and masculinity. Men in our culture are supposed to be sexual. And so for them to view these images is not considered abnormal or inappropriate to their masculine behaviors.
Mm-hmm. And Leslie, so I was talking about Lizzo, Cardi B has the song, WAP, and they performed, she and Megan Thee Stallion performed at the Grammys. And I got an article actually from my own daughter who said there were like 1,000 complaints that were made, to the federal regulators about their performance. And again, Cardi's a mom. And she's talked about openly the shaming that she's had to endure because of her lyrics and her songs and, the way she dresses and the way she performs. Do you think there is a line that, that goes too far, that women like Cardi B or maybe even Crystal on her OnlyFans, site? Is there a line that women cross that you would say is too far?
I mean, that's a hard question because the feminist in me says no, absolutely not. Women should be able to explore their sexuality and embrace their body in any way that they choose to. But at the same time, I do have a young daughter, and I want to raise her to embrace her curves, embrace her sexuality, love who she is. But I guess that's just it's my choice to not turn on the television and monitor what she's seeing at a young age. And when she's old enough to understand those, that song and these Instagram posts and all these things, then we'll have those conversations. So I think it's more of me having to do more parenting and let women choose to be who they are.
Yeah. Did it surprise you, Dr. Hayden, in the case of Crystal, that it was one, the dad, like, okay, why are you on the site anyhow? And then you're going to try to out somebody else on it. So, what it says a lot about him and his character. But did it surprise you that there were the other mothers at this school? So the mothers of the kids that are friends, presumably with Crystal's kids, who were the ones who were printed the pictures and sent them to the school and basically were, the leaders in this mom shaming.
Again, I would borrow Leslie's language. It disappointed me, but it doesn't surprise me. These mothers, they're also shaped by and disciplined by norms around motherhood. And they know that they would feel that doing such a thing would be inappropriate. And so if they're seeing someone in their circle do such a thing, that reinforces their own good motherhood by, in a sense, shaming others.
Yeah, I guess I was a little shocked to hear that it was women in this, it's a Catholic school, so 300 kids or so. So this is not a big school. It's a small, relatively small school. That it was the actual women in the school who were the ones who were ultimately leading the charge. There was this other case, Leslie, in the news. I don't know if you saw it. It was an Indiana mechanic. She was fired because her coworkers found her fans only page and became obsessed with it. They're watching the page at work, and she says she gets fired, but her male coworkers does. They're not let go. So it's the OnlyFans site that, her photos that she posted on the site. Does that surprise you?
I mean, absolutely not. It's just this malicious double standard that we've been fighting against for just generations. And I think that it is on us now to push that forward, to hold these men accountable for their actions if we're going to hold her accountable, right? She shouldn't have been fired. She shouldn't have went on her off time and how she chooses to spend it. But parsing out and picking and choosing who is guilty and who is not in a situation that's so personal is, like I said, it's a malicious double standard, and giving a platform to it, discussing it, and having this conversation hopefully opens some people's eyes.
Yeah, I think I called it fans only. The site is only fans, so I want to make that correction. Dr. Hayden, how do we change this? Gloria Allred is fighting it in the courts. She's fighting it by representing women who've been sexually assaulted, sexually harassed. But how do we address this whole notion that, as you said, this idealized notion of what a mother should and shouldn't be?
Well, I'll echo Leslie again and thank you for hosting this segment, because I think this is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having. I think it is about education. And I have to say, I've been talking a lot about being disappointed about sort of the culture. But I'm a teacher, and my young students, my 20-something students, I think, are really starting to change their attitudes about women's ability to express themselves, to be sexual, to engage in whatever behaviors they think are appropriate. And again, with Leslie, I would agree. We want to watch and be careful about what our children see, but that comes from the receiver's part. I think in terms of the communication we want to put out in the world, that should be something that women have the freedom to do as they feel fit.
Yeah. What do you think, Leslie? I mean, you worked in the media as a journalist. What do you want or, expect the media to do in terms of helping to, change this image that mothers can't be both sexual beings and good parents?
Well, I think that just comes down to making sure that women and mothers are getting back in the workforce after this pandemic, and more mothers are, writing these stories and offering their voice and explaining sharing their experience, right? I think that the media needs to also be accountable. Like what Gloria Allred was talking about with Harvey Weinstein, the media had some culpability and they needed to be responsible. And I think when we talk about motherhood and mom shaming and women empowerment, the media also needs to take that accountability, be reflective, look at their decisions, look at their headlines, look at their clickbait, and have a real internal conversations. But I know that as a woman and a mother, my job is to give a platform and give a voice to all kinds of motherhood. Right now, I feel like mom shaming culture is in overdrive. And I think that that's largely due for a woman wanting to validate her own decisions and her own choices as a mother. We're making a million decisions on how to raise these humans. And when we see another woman doing it differently and successfully, it causes us to question our own choices. And it's often easier to put someone down for their decisions and tear them apart than it is to be reflective and wonder if maybe there was another way that we should be doing it.
And you made a good point. I wrote it down, Leslie. You said mom shaming is in overdrive. Dr. Hayden, what do you think in this moment again of Me Too, where women are feeling empowered, where they're finding their voices, where they're speaking up against oppression and sexual violence? Why is mom shaming in overdrive?
I think it's, again, not surprising. Susan Faluti's book from 1989, Backlash, talks about the ways in which whenever we take one step forward, we often take a step backward. And so I think when we see women starting to gain more power, there becomes pressure to sort of push back against that.
So you think it's the power we are gaining from the Me Too movement But again, I guess I'm perplexed, and you've answered it, but I got to ask you again. Maybe I get a different answer. I come at it a different way. Women, the same women that are feeling empowered, that are finding their voices, that are speaking up, are then, they're doing that on the left, but then on the right, they're attacking other women.
Well, I wonder, though, if the women who are attacking other women are really the ones who are feeling empowered. It's obviously a really big country, and some women have made great strides. But as we know, a lot of women are really suffering right now. And so it might be that they're sort of feeling frustrated, feeling angry, feeling that other women are taking steps that are unavailable to them. And that leads to feelings of jealousy, or I'm not even sure women are aware of it, right? That this isn't necessarily a self-reflective kind of thing. But I don't think, again, that it's really surprising. And again, I would suggest that perhaps the women who are most empowered probably aren't engaging in this behavior.
Do you think if we didn't have, what these websites that we've been talking about, the fans only fans, how much are they contributing, you think, to what we're experiencing around mom shaming?
Is that to me?
Yeah, just as you, Dr. Hayden,
Sure.
We didn't have 10 years ago a site where a woman could go and post videos or photographs that, somebody else can look at it and they then judge and decide if this is right or wrong.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Social media has changed so much of our society right now, and it's so instantaneous. And so it becomes very easy for people to render judgment quickly and quite publicly.
Yeah, and obviously, traditional media has always been there, Leslie. But do you feel like social media is really fueling a lot of this? The ability for people to just literally pick up their phone and start posting, and give anonymous, sometimes, commentary on other people, particularly women.
Absolutely. I actually, in my book, I write an entire chapter about how parenting only looks easy on Instagram, because that is what we're seeing. We're seeing this motherhood perfected, blasted out on social media. But mom shaming, I don't think is anything new. It was historically just at the hands of like our own family and mothers and mother-in-laws. But today, the sites like Instagram and Twitter has given a megaphone to people to pass judgment, to, as you said, do it instantaneously and largely do it anonymously and without repercussion. I mean, you take an example like Chrissy Teigen, who was sort of shamed off of Twitter for a while because of the horrible and negative comments that she was receiving based on a huge tragedy in her life, a huge grief of losing a child. And the fact that people were coming at her so viciously, it was saddening, but also, to Dr. Hayden's point, not surprising that that we're doing this to women. And I think it's really just dreadful, because I feel like right now as a culture, we're seeing this spike in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, depression, anxiety, PTSD around women. And the pandemic only heightened that. And so we're pouring the salt in the wound of so many moms who are already struggling.
So, Leslie, your book, You Are a Effing Awesome Mom. Is that your way of, helping some woman out there that may be feeling like they're failing at parenting, to inspire them, to motivate them, to let them know that they're doing a great job?
100%. I say that this is a motherhood book and not a baby book. This is all about modern women as we're navigating motherhood as this generation of independent, educated women who are having children later. And then we're transitioning into this insane chapter of life where we really go through this identity crisis and figure out who we are in this new stage. And I want to let women know that you can have really hard, really bad days, but still be effing awesome moms.
Yeah. So what's the response been, Leslie, to the book? Are women, do you think the message is resonating? Are you reaching those women that might be feeling less empowered, the women that Dr. Hayden say may not, be, feeling like this whole Me Too movement is touching and reaching them?
yes, besides having my two children, putting this book out into the world and hearing the responses of women who are finally feeling heard, who are able to see themselves in these pages, who are able to put a voice and words to their experience, because early in motherhood, you don't really have the time to be reflective about what you've just gone through. And so to listen to a book or to read a book and to hear, oh yes, that's my experience. Oh my gosh, I had a horrible time like that. I made this horrible decision, or I felt this sort of guilt. And to know you're not alone, it is so validating, and it is such a relief. And while I can't be there to, hug each of these women or to be a physical support for them, just knowing that there's another woman who had a similar experience, I think allows them to sleep a little easier. And that has been such a gift.
Dr. Hayden, what else should we be doing in this moment? Obviously, Leslie is sharing words of inspiration. I follow you on Instagram, Leslie, so I see your page is full of inspirational quotes and sharing of your personal story, your kids, to help other women feel empowered. What else should we be doing in this moment, Dr. Hayden? Those of us who, want to help, want to get involved, want to do more, want to, be the pushback to the shaming that is so prevalent.
I think we need to listen to the stories of individual mothers and to recognize what their circumstances are and what their desires are and what their value systems are, and to recognize that there are all kinds of mothers out there who are doing it maybe not the way we do it, but they're doing it right, and their children are growing, and they're going to be, and the women are important contributors to our community, and so are their children. And we have to just stop judging and start listening and start respecting one another.
Yeah, no, great point. Stop judging, start listening. We've got to leave it there, ladies. Everyone, make sure you get a copy of Leslie's book, You Are a Effing Awesome Mom, available in all bookstores. You can get it online, anywhere books are sold. Thank you, Leslie, for lending your voice to this important topic. Thank you, Dr. Hayden, for your insights. A pleasure to sit down and talk with both of you. We've got to do better, and you gave us some good tips on how to get started on that, Dr. Hayden. And Leslie, lots of gems in your new book as well. All right. I just want to thank all of my guests. This is such an important topic. Even if you're not a mom, but if you're a woman, you have probably had your fair share of shaming. I can remember myself going on CNN a couple of years ago talking about sexual harassment, and someone sending me an email harassing me about the way I was dressed. So this happens to pretty much anyone. I mean, you don't have to be on television. You don't have to, have a bunch of initials behind your name, but you probably have had an experience where someone that doesn't even know you has made some decisions about you, and they've judged you, they've criticized you, they've talked about your hair or your clothing or, your parenting skills or the choices that you've made. And Dr. Hayden, I think, put it best when she says it's time to stop judging and to start listening. We don't know the struggles that other people have had. We haven't walked in their shoes. We don't know what their journey has been like. We all know, though, that if you keep living, you are going to have some situations in your own life. So you probably want to be careful about pointing the fingers and throwing stones, particularly if you live in a glass house. Just some words to live by before I get out. Just said it. Don't judge my story by the chapter you walk in on. Translation, you don't know what I've been through. And just because someone can make doing bad look good doesn't mean that they are not without problems. And as women, we should be looking for ways to lift each other up, not printing photographs and sending them to school principals and administrators to get someone's kids kicked out of school. Just imagine how traumatizing that was for those 3 kids. And those women that did that had so many other choices that they could have made other than tearing Crystal Jackson down with that hateful act that they engaged in. And finally, I'll just say this. Real women, and I do mean real women, we adjust each other's crowns. I'm out, y'all. Be safe out there. Don't forget to wear your mask. And remember, we are all in this together.